I almost threw it away without looking. Just a crumpled receipt wedged between a grocery list and a gum wrapper in the bottom of Logan's jacket pocket. But something made me smooth it out. Maybe habit, maybe intuition. And there it was, Tramonto. My heart skipped. That name used to mean something. It was our place. The soft lighting, the quiet clink of wine glasses, the way he'd squeeze my hand across the table and say, "Here's to us." That table knew our love story. Or at least, I thought it did. We hadn't been back in over a year. Life got busy, sure, but we never stopped loving that place. Or so I believed. The receipt said otherwise. A Thursday night, just 3 weeks ago. He'd told me he was working late, stuck with a client pitch he couldn't reschedule. I remember eating leftovers by myself that night, flipping channels, waiting for the sound of the garage door. And now this tiny slip of paper was whispering a different version of the evening, one with wine, maybe laughter, and someone who wasn't me. I didn't go into panic mode. Not right away. I just moved. Almost like muscle memory. Logged into our credit card account, pulled the last 2 months. And there they were, Tramonto, again and again. Thursdays, Fridays. All those late nights and deadlines suddenly looked different under fluorescent truth. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't get a full breath. I wasn't ready to confront him. Not yet. I needed more than a hunch. I needed to see how deep the knife had gone before I pulled it out. I sat at the kitchen table with the laptop open and my fingers frozen above the keys. The numbers blurred together, but the pattern was unmistakable. Each charge was a breadcrumb, leading me straight to a truth I didn't ask to find. 2 entrees, 1 dessert, wine for 2. Always the same total. Not once did he mention a business dinner. Not once did he bring home leftovers. I pressed my palms to my eyes and tried to will the ache away. But it was there, cold, sharp, and spreading. And you know what stung the most? It wasn't just the betrayal. It was where. Tramonto wasn't just a restaurant to me. It was the place we'd celebrated our anniversary 3 years in a row. It was where he once surprised me with a dessert that had "forever" written in chocolate script. Every inch of that place held echoes of us, of who we were before bills and busy schedules and separate routines. And now? Now it was his playground, a stage for whatever performance he was putting on with her. Still, I didn't say a word to him that night. I reheated the chicken from 2 days ago, poured a glass of wine I didn't want, and sat across from him as he scrolled through his phone, mumbling about work. He didn't look up. Didn't notice I hadn't touched my plate. I stared at the man who used to read my moods from a single glance, and felt like I was staring at a stranger, but I wasn't going to lose myself in his silence. Not this time. I just needed to wait, watch, and plan. That night, I lay in bed listening to his breathing, steady, unbothered. He fell asleep so easily while my mind spun like a carousel I couldn't get off. I kept seeing that receipt in my head, like it was glowing, pulsing, daring me to wake him up and demand answers. But something told me not to. Not yet. If I exploded now, all I'd get were excuses, half-truths, gaslight wrapped in charm, and I wasn't in the mood to be handled. Instead, I reached for my phone and scrolled through old photos, birthdays, anniversaries, laughing selfies at Tramonto, back when we still looked at each other like we were in on some beautiful secret. I wasn't just grieving a marriage. I was grieving a version of myself, the woman who believed in all of it, who saved special dresses for special nights, who trusted that when he said forever, he meant it. I missed her, and I wasn't about to let her be made into a fool. So I decided to wait, to gather, to breathe. I needed more than whispers and receipts. I needed the whole picture framed in clarity. If he had turned our place into something cheap, into a hideaway for his lies, then maybe it was time to take it back. On my terms. My timing. And trust me, I already had a plan forming, right there in the quiet. The next morning, I waited until Logan left for work before making the call. I kept my voice light, casual, even threw in a fake laugh. "Hi, yes, I'm just confirming a reservation my husband made last week. Logan Carter? For Friday night?" The hostess hesitated for half a second, just long enough to tell me she'd found something. "Yes, of course," she chirped. "Table for 2, 7 p.m., same time as always." I thanked her, hung up, and just stared at the phone like it had spoken some ancient truth. Same time, as always. It was almost insulting how easy it was, like he didn't even try to hide it. Same restaurant, same night, week after week like clockwork. While I was home lighting candles and waiting on texts that came later and later. And suddenly, just like that, the sadness started to burn off, replaced by something else. Cold, clean, focused. I wasn't going to cry about this anymore. No, if he wanted an audience for his betrayal, I'd give him one. But this time, I would be holding the spotlight. So I called back. "Hi again. I'd like to make a reservation as well. For Friday, same time. Under the name Sienna Carter, party of 6. The woman on the line sounded slightly confused, but took it down anyway. "A celebration," I told her. Something I'd been meaning to do with friends. When I hung up, my heart was pounding. Not from fear, but from power. I wasn't just going to walk in and catch him. I was going to own the moment. Take back the table, the restaurant, and myself. I spent the next few days assembling my crew, the ones who'd seen me through every chapter of my life, from wedding jitters to late-night tears when Logan first started coming home distant. I told them I wanted to celebrate friendship, resilience, and maybe toast to new beginnings. They didn't press for details, not yet. But I saw the spark of curiosity in their eyes. And honestly, that was fine. Let the truth arrive with the wine. Let it pour slowly, the way real stories do. I picked the dress days in advance. Red, because there's power in red. A color that doesn't ask permission to be noticed. I booked a blowout, polished my nails, and practiced smiling in the mirror until it felt natural again. There was something healing in the preparation, like I was stitching myself back together one step at a time. This wasn't going to be some messy emotional ambush. No, this was going to be poised, beautiful, a performance of truth, and I had front row seats saved for the ones who loved me most. I even sent Logan a sweet text that morning. "Hope your meeting goes well tonight. Don't wait up." Let him walk straight into it, blind. Let him believe for one last time that his lies were seamless, that he'd pulled it off. I had no interest in screaming matches or dramatic exits. What I wanted was silence, the kind that speaks louder than any accusation. I wasn't going to take back just the table. I was going to take back the story and write my own ending. By Friday afternoon, the air around me felt electric, charged with something unspoken. I wasn't nervous, not exactly. It was more like standing on the edge of a long-held breath, knowing it was finally time to exhale. My friends texted me excitedly about outfits and rides, thinking this was just some overdue girls' night, and in a way, it was. Only I knew it would also be a reckoning, a return, a reclamation dressed in heels and red lipstick. I arrived early, walked through the doors of Tremonto like I owned them, because for years I did. The host looked up, and I smiled with the ease of someone who's been here 1,000 times before. Reservation under Sienna Carter. The way his eyes widened just slightly told me everything I needed to know. He remembered. He knew. They all did. I was the wife, the original, the one who used to leave tips with handwritten thank you notes. And now I was back, not broken, but brilliant. Our table was near the front, facing the entrance. I chose it on purpose. I wanted to see it all. The door swinging open, the recognition flicker in his eyes, the slow unraveling. My friends arrived one by one, bringing warmth, laughter, and a sense of calm I didn't realize I needed. I let the wine flow. I let them fill the space with joy. And all the while, I kept my eyes on that door, waiting for him to walk through it, still believing he was the one in control. It happened so quickly, and yet, I remember every second in detail. The door opened, and there he was. Logan. Button-down shirt, that same confident tilt of his head, the slight smirk he always wore when he thought he was 2 steps ahead of the world. But he wasn't alone. Her hand was in his, manicured, delicate, clutching his arm like she belonged there. They laughed as they stepped inside, as if walking into a memory they had no right to own. For a moment, he didn't see me. His eyes were scanning the room for their usual table, the one in the back, near the window. The same one we always used to sit at on date nights, before date night became just another phrase he threw around when guilt needed a cover. And then the hostess greeted him. Her voice was sweet, but I caught the flicker of panic behind her eyes. She gestured toward the table. My table. Our table. Occupied. "Oh, Mr. Carter," she said, soft and apologetic. "There's been a mix-up. That table was taken earlier. By your wife." And just like that, the air shifted. I watched him freeze. His smile faltered, his shoulders stiffened. He turned his head, slowly, like someone waking up in a nightmare. And our eyes met across the room. My heart didn't race. It didn't crumble. It stayed steady. Because I wasn't there to fall apart. I was there to rise. I stood up slowly, letting my chair slide back with a soft scrape against the tile. Every head at my table turned. My friends froze mid-sip, their conversations dropping like a curtain. I didn't need to say a word. They followed my gaze and understood. The man walking toward the chaos he'd created, dragging a woman who had no idea what she'd just stepped into. I picked up my glass, smoothed the fabric of my dress, and took one slow breath. Then I began to walk. The room stretched in front of me like a stage, and I didn't rush. I wanted him to feel every second of it, every eye that would turn toward him, every whisper beginning to stir in the corners. He stood there stiffly, still clutching her hand like it could anchor him. But nothing could. Not tonight. She blinked at me, confused, uncertain. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered how many nights she must have sat in my booth, sipping my wine, soaking in the lie he fed her. And when I reached them, I smiled. Not a cruel smile, not bitter, just knowing. I looked at him, and his face said everything his mouth couldn't. Guilt, panic, regret. I lifted my glass slightly like offering a toast. Not to him, to the end. "I see you're still ordering the usual," I said calmly, my voice steady and clear. "Funny. I used to think this place was sacred, but I guess to you, it was just convenient." She tried to speak first, the woman beside him, but her voice caught in her throat. Maybe she expected me to scream. Maybe she was bracing for some messy theatrical scene. But I wasn't there to give them drama. I was there to give them clarity. I looked at her. Really looked. Younger, sure. Pretty in that polished, curated way. But she didn't look confident. Not now. She looked like someone realizing they'd stepped into the middle of a story they didn't fully understand. The hostess stood off to the side, awkward and flustered, clutching the menu like a shield. I gave her a gentle nod and said, "It's all right. I have a table already." Then I turned back to him. "You know," I added, "when you said you were working late all those nights, I believed you. I really did. And all this time, you were just rehearsing lies under candlelight." I watched his throat move as he swallowed hard. He opened his mouth, but I held up a hand. No, don't. This isn't your moment. I pivoted, heels clicking against the tile, and walked back to my table, the one filled with laughter, with women who'd stood by me through decades of real life. They didn't clap. They didn't cheer. But when I sat back down, they lifted their glasses. So, I did the same. I turned toward the entrance, still holding my glass, and raised it. Not to him, not to her, but to the truth finally standing upright. And just like that, I was ready for the next course. I didn't rush. I let him stew in the silence, the kind that hums with heat, where every eye in the room is pretending not to stare. He was still standing there, slack-jawed, holding a woman who clearly wanted the floor to swallow her whole. I rose again, this time not to walk toward him, but to stand tall at my table. I lifted my glass, not shaking, not teary, just steady, clear, certain. To reclaiming what's mine, I said, my voice cutting through the room like a violin string. The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. The truth has a volume of its own. This place meant something to me, I told him. It held pieces of our history. And yet you brought her here, to our booth, our table, our rituals, like they were yours to give away. I looked straight at him, and then at her. I thought maybe you just wanted something new, but now I see. You just wanted something easy, something that didn't require you to show up. She flinched when I turned to her, and I almost left it there. Almost. But some things deserve to be said out loud. You picked the crumbs, I told her, voice low and even. You didn't steal anything. You were handed what was left after he hollowed out the real thing. She blinked fast, trying to look unaffected. But I saw it, the shift, the doubt, that seed of realization planting itself. And I knew I had said enough. The rest didn't need to be shouted. The rest would echo on its own. I let the silence linger for just a moment longer, not out of cruelty, but because sometimes silence says more than 100 perfect words. I turned back to my friends who were still watching with a quiet fierceness I'll never forget. Their eyes held no pity, just pride, support, a kind of unspoken sisterhood that wrapped itself around me like armor. I walked back toward my seat, spine straight, glass still in hand, and let the air settle behind me like the closing of a book. Before I sat down, I gave them one final gift. One last truth. I raised my glass just slightly and said, to freedom, and to finding out just in time. It wasn't a toast for revenge. It was for release, for clarity, for the gift of no longer wondering. Logan still hadn't moved. His mouth opened, then closed again, like he wanted to say something but realized he'd already said too much, with actions, with lies. With every Friday night he thought I'd never question. I didn't look back again. I didn't need to. Whatever happened at that entrance, the muttered excuses, the awkward shuffle out, the unraveling of whatever fantasy they had built, that was no longer my concern. I was surrounded by people who loved me for who I really was. Not a version, not a secret. The wine was warm in my hand, the food was arriving hot, and the laughter, real laughter, began to rise around the table again. I hadn't just reclaimed a place, I'd reclaimed myself. The waitress came by moments later, eyes wide with curiosity but professional to the bone. "Would you like to order now?" she asked, almost hesitating. I smiled. Really smiled. "Yes, let's start with the bruschetta, and another bottle of the Barolo." My voice didn't shake. My appetite had returned. Not just for food, but for life. For joy. For realness. I wasn't the woman waiting by the window anymore. I was the woman rewriting her ending, one course at a time. My friends leaned in, shoulders touching mine, sharing jokes and stories like they always did. But now, everything felt lighter, brighter, like I had unclenched a part of myself that had been holding tension for years. One of them squeezed my hand beneath the table, and that tiny gesture meant more than any grand speech. I didn't need validation from anyone else in the room. The people who mattered were already at my table, and somewhere behind me, I heard the door close. Faint, final. I didn't turn. I didn't flinch. Because the only thing worth watching now was what came next, and I was finally ready to see it clearly. By the following week, the moment had already taken on a life of its own. One of my friends had filmed part of it, discreetly, respectfully, and somehow it made its way through our circle like wildfire. I never asked her to share it, but I didn't stop her either. Wordless clips. Me standing, glass raised, him stunned silent. It wasn't a scandal. It was a reckoning, a quiet revolution wrapped in red silk. And in every comment, every message, I felt it. Women saying, "I've been there." I filed for divorce that Monday, calmly, efficiently. I handed over the receipts, the records, everything he thought I'd never find. There was no screaming, no begging, no bargaining, just paperwork and a signature. He didn't fight it. He barely even looked me in the eye. And I realized then, it was never about the other woman. It was about the fact that he thought I'd never stop waiting, that I'd stay, keep the house warm, the table set, while he fed his ego behind my back. But I was done with crumbs. I was done with waiting. A few days later, I received a handwritten card from Tremonto's owner. He remembered me. Of course he did. "The real Mrs. Carter," he wrote, with a wink in his words and a bottle of Barolo waiting for me whenever I returned. I smiled reading it. Because somewhere along the way, I stopped associating that place with pain. It had become something else entirely. A symbol of what I took back, with grace, with fire, and with witnesses. I went back to Tremonto a month later, not with hesitation, but with intention. Same dress, same red lipstick, different heart. This time I didn't need to reclaim anything. I simply walked in as someone whole. The host greeted me like an old friend, and I was seated at a new table. Not our old booth, not some symbol of what used to be, but somewhere fresh. A place untouched by memory, ready to be filled with something entirely mine. My friends met me there, laughing as they arrived, hugging me like I'd returned from a long journey. And in some ways I had. We ordered whatever we wanted. No second-guessing, no shrinking ourselves. We clinked glasses not in rebellion, but in joy. I watched them talk, listened to the rhythm of their voices, and felt gratitude rise in me like warmth after a storm. There was no lingering ache, no leftover anger, just the peace that comes from finally choosing yourself. Later that night, I checked my phone and saw his name on the screen. A missed call, a vague text. "Can we talk?" I didn't open it. I didn't need to. There was nothing left to say. Not because I hated him, but because I was no longer standing in the past, waiting for an apology that wouldn't change a thing. I tucked the phone away, took another sip of wine, and leaned into the laughter at my table. This was the only conversation I needed. These days, Tremonto isn't haunted anymore. It's lit from within, not just by candles or chandeliers, but by something harder to define. Confidence, maybe. Peace. A kind of quiet power that lingers in the corners when you stop shrinking to fit into someone else's comfort. I've been back several times now, sometimes with friends, sometimes alone with a book and a glass of wine. And every time, it feels like a small celebration, not of what was lost, but of what I found when I finally let it go. Logan tried again a few months later, a birthday message, a memory he thought might make me soften. I didn't block him. I didn't even reply. That part of my life no longer needed closure. It had ended the way all great illusions do, in plain sight. And the beauty of it? I didn't just survive it. I shaped it. I wrote the final scene. I took back the table, the story, the voice. And I made it mine. The last time I sat there, near the window, I watched a couple across the room. Young, in love, unaware of anything but each other. I smiled, not with envy, but with peace. I looked down at my plate, then at the empty chair across from me and thought, the table was set for two, but I made it a feast for my freedom.